I want parents to understand that it is the natural thing as kids get into their teenage years and early teens, and then more so in the later teens, for the child to branch off and break away from the parent, right? I've often told them the more they dominate and control their child, the more radical that breakaway will be. If you let the child be an individual growing up, then that'll be a gradual individuation. If you don't, it will be a more radical, rebellious sort of thing, whatever it takes in their mind to get away and stand on their own 2 feet. But it's going to happen. It's supposed to happen, right?
It's supposed to happen. And sometimes parents will extol their child's virtues and say to me, my child is so good. My child and I talk every single day, and I'm my child's best friend. And, for me as a psychologist, it's just one red flag after another red flag.
Oh, my gosh.
After another red flag. Yeah. Because the child is supposed to be moving away from you and discovering who it is they are and not be enmeshed and stuck to your apron strings, right? So parents mistake closeness for enmeshment and enmeshment for closeness. And that is because of the parents' own toxic desires to feel needed, to feel like they are still worthy, that they have an identity. And that's really one of the greatest parental pitfalls, is the parents' own need to be significant in the child's eyes. And in doing that, they use their children for their sense of worth and identity and never let the child find their way. And that's why we're raising this generation of these very fragile children and very enmeshed, overly identified as being parents. And this is a failure, I believe, and we need to remedy it with compassion and understanding, but we need to do so quite immediately.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. You have tips on parenting, and your number 2 tip, if I can just read this, it says, reframe every struggle with your child as an invitation for your personal growth and awareness. When you make this internal pivot, you begin to shift how you view your child and how you relate to them. Can you commit to asking yourself, what does this moment say about me? Just this one pivot has the power to change your entire dynamic with your children. So you're saying, can you commit to asking yourself, what does this moment say about me? Now, here's my question. Based on parental legacy, based on the fact that there is a generational legacy, a parental legacy, that anonymous poem, Children Learn What They Live, is so profound. If a parent grew up in a dysfunctional home, if they grew up with broken parents, they come from divorce, they come from alcoholic parents, they come from a violent home or whatever, where do they find the insight, the energy, the resource to do this seemingly simple thing that you're talking about? Can you commit to asking yourself, what does this moment say about me? How do they find that and get that direction when they're a product of broken parenting themselves?
Right. I get this question so often in another way when people ask me, your work in conscious parenting is about becoming conscious. But how do I become conscious of that that's unconscious? Here's the way you do it, or the way it will be done to you. Our life will eventually fall apart to such a degree that we will hit the rubber will hit the road, so to speak, which means our ego, our coping strategies will eventually stop working. And one day we will have this rock bottom moment, which I, as a therapist, wait for, not in a perverse way, but in an invitational way, because it's that rock bottom moment. So that last fight with your 16-year-old, your 5th grader is dropping out of school, your 20-year-old refuses to talk to you. All these pivotal moments of pain will happen where your ego is forced to surrender and you're forced to say, okay, what in me now needs to heal? So sadly or gladly, pain is the way that we come to our greatest awakening. I often say pain is the greatest portal for our transformation. But till that happens, we will keep being dysfunctional. And eventually something cracks where we wake up. And the reason I do parenting more than anything else, and I talk about parenting, is because with every other client, it's so hard to break their ego. But with the parent, I have found, because of our intense love and devotion for our children and our inability to really see them in pain, that I find that the defense of the parent cracks a little bit, and I can get in there and help them to see how so much of this is a repetition of their own childhood. And finally, because they love their children so much, the parent is slightly willing to see how they are so co-creating these patterns. And, our children are our greatest mirrors. They are the ones for whom we will do work for, like I've never seen them do it for anyone else. So that's why I talk about conscious parenting so much.
Yeah, they're certainly motivated. Most parents, they'll lay down in front of a train for their child if they need to, and it does motivate them. I'm talking to Dr. Shefali, and mark your calendar because February 28th, the Parenting Map, step-by-step solutions to consciously create the ultimate parent-child relationship. It's not going to be a book you read. It's going to be a book that you read and turn into a how-to manual that I think you're going to refer back to time and time again when different challenges come up. I expect it's going to be dog-eared. I expect you're going to buy several copies and share it with people that you love and care about. So it's the Parenting Map, and that's what we're talking about today. When we talk about these kids that are getting into their teens, you had a nice way of putting it a little bit ago. You said, no screens until teens. This is something that social media, the web, is just a reality in life today. I mean, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. When I started the Dr. Phil show, there were no social media platforms. That's how old I am and how long I've been on the air. And it's created a whole new set of toxicity, a whole new set of challenges. We've had to deal with cyberbullying and children committing suicide from that, just horrible fallout from it. When do you think, and I know every child is different, some are mature sooner than others, and every situation differs, but when do you think it's appropriate for parents to allow their child to have a smartphone or an iPad, a computer that's internet capable?
Yeah. Again, it's a hard one to answer because our schools are giving our kids internet, iPads to do math on. But if the parent truly understood the dangers of letting their children foray into the world of the internet without supervision, guidance, controls, they would really agree with me. And I would say that age is no earlier, and I'm talking about the most controlled, disciplined kid, 13 or 14 years old, no earlier. And this may sound rigid and excessive, but I've seen the effects so close. I've seen children being exposed to porn before their brains could, metabolize the information. Children being exposed to cyberbullying, being called fat, stupid, and ugly when they did not need to be exposed to that kind of, disrespect and slander. So there may be a lot of educational elements, and therefore the parent needs to supervise and have strong boundaries, and not let the child just have this unmitigated, unmediated access to this jungle out there. And that's what we're talking about, is good boundaries. But I'll tell you, and you know this, we can tell a parent have boundaries, and the parent can start out by having good boundaries. But the number one fights in all the houses of parents who come to me for counseling is around the boundaries around social media. I mean, I'm negotiating these boundaries with these children as young as 7 or 8. So we're not fighting about TV time anymore, where the parent could hide the remote. We are talking about the child's phone. So we've given them a phone or a device too early before their time. And now we are having fights and conflicts over something we should have never given to them in the first place. So parents, don't feel like you're the bad guys if you have strong boundaries around social media. And don't be afraid to institute them, because you're really allowing your children to do things like we used to do it in childhood, like get bored, be creative, stare outside a window, pick up a pen and doodle and draw. These are all things that are pro healthy development that our children are now being robbed of because of our own and their screen addiction.